your mayor, he did a press conference. Did you see
Yes,
it?
ma'am. I watched the press conference. I saw Brandon Johnson. He was very happy that the sanctuary city ordinance hasn't changed. So Ray Lopez, who I talk about all the time, he is a Hispanic alderman. Another Hispanic alderman, Alderman Sylvia Tabares, said that they wanted to amend the Welcoming City ordinance so that anybody who was arrested for drugs, crime, or prostitution, or convicted of drugs, crime, prostitution, or gangbanging would be reported to ICE. Well, they were saying the opposition to this very logical ordinance, they were saying that, oh, it goes against the Trust Act, which is a Illinois act that says that victims of crimes cannot be turned over to ICE. And so that's part of the reason that the state police can't work with ICE, neither can the counties. And so that was the issue. But what they're failing to realize is that we know that Chicago has home rule. Home rule means that the rules of the city supersede because we have home rules when it comes to our ordinances. However, the masses did not know that. So they were able to play this. And so today they packed City Hall with a whole bunch of undocumented immigrants, all kind of people. What's the guy's name? Andre Vasquez put out a PSA and said, if you are an undocumented immigrant, or if you support us, come down to City Hall. We want to pack the public comment. We want to pack the gallery. And so a lot of them came out, but luckily the vice president of Chicago Red, he put his name in the box and he was pulled. That is the Chicago Conservative. So he went and he spoke on behalf of the American people. Out of 8 people who spoke today, only one person spoke for the American people, and that was the vice president of Chicago Red. So after it was over, Brandon went to go do his press conference, and he's like, I'm so happy that the aldermen decided that we're going to stand with our immigrant communities in Chicago because we have a long-standing history of being a sanctuary city. But what people have to understand is that Chicago was a sanctuary city for runaway slaves, not illegal immigrants. And so it's getting more and more disrespectful because not only here in Chicago are they tying these illegal immigrants to our slavery story, but they're doing it on a national level too. And that's part of what their plan is, which is to usurp our political capital.
I want to play this clip here.
Their message was loud and clear at the intersection of 18th and Blue Island in Pilsen. Trump's administration is vowing Chicago will be ground zero for their mass deportation.
All the stereotypes, all the fear-mongering doesn't match up with reality.
Police sources says a special order advisory about responding to incidents involving citizenship status was recently given to supervisors. The CPD advisory, which is based on Chicago's Welcoming City ordinance designed to protect undocumented immigrants, mirrors the Illinois Trust Act, a state law which prohibits law enforcement from cooperating with U.S. immigration and customs enforcement officials. That means police can't collect or provide information about a person's immigration status. Their message was loud and clear at the intersection.
So who are these? These people were protesting, supporting to keep the sanctuary laws intact.
Yes, ma'am. So they were protesting the amendment of the ordinance, and then they're also protesting Papa T, meaning Tom Homan, because when he gets here, oh my God, we're gonna throw this man a parade. You ever seen the girls twerking on top of the police cars? We're gonna go get the twerkers for Tom, okay? It is going down in Chicago. These people have got to go home, Dana. They're going home. And so they believe by doing these protests, people like us are supposed to say, oh my God, we're so sorry, we're sad, you have to leave. No, you're leaving. Brandon is going to go to jail if he chooses to give these people any type of defense against ICE, because ICE supersedes Chicago, because that's the federal law according to the U.S. Constitution. So we're going to see how this goes. But I'm excited. I can tell you that. I am very excited. Everybody around me is excited. They're like, hey, Tuesday, that's our day. What we got to do, P-Ray? You know, we got to call a number. Do we have to point people out? Do I have to hold his hand and walk him to where they are? Like, how are we going to get involved? So it's going to be a good time here in Chicago. There are many more people who are against this sanctuary city ordinance than there are for, because remember, we never voted for this.
Well, So now these people are coming out vocally saying you need to protect us.
Yes, and they did that the first time Madani was in office, because they sent ICE here to raid the markets and the factories and things like that. And so they were doing these massive demonstrations like, oh my God, we're not going, we're staying here. And then on Mexican Independence Day in Chicago, it is crazy. Like everybody has to hide in the house. They're outside shooting people, stopping the expressways, stopping major thoroughways, doing their little circle spin out parties. Like they really want to show that they are here and they are in charge. And so now we came back with the feds and we're like, no, you're not in charge. And so now they think that they can do what they did before, but this is Madani's second term. So he's not running for a re-election again, and he can go full foot to the gas, and it's going to work because we're going to help him.
So what else did the mayor say, specifically talking about the migrant crisis? Because I did catch some of it, and he was mentioning about the homeless shelters. Did he close down some, or is he still keeping it open? Because the concern was if you keep these migrant shelters open, that's most likely would be a one-stop shop for ICE to come in and just scoop up a lot of people all at once. So what is going on with the homeless shelters?
Well, I got a scoop last night from a man who works security in those shelters. He said that what they're doing is they're basically just changing the names. So instead of it being called a migrant shelter, now it's called a homeless shelter because they're considered homeless as well. And so they won't be on the books as being a migrant shelter. So this is just a way for them to hide them, number one. But number two, it also allows them to utilize the homelessness funds because now they're being categorized as being homeless. And so they can use that federal money that was sent here to help our homeless population. And then remember, they always had more beds in their shelters than Americans had in their shelters, or in our shelters rather. And so this will just allow them to have access to more American beds. Because Brandon already told them, come here. We have more space. We have more room for everybody. And we don't. And that's why Tom Homan is coming here to clean up next week.
So Biden administration was giving them millions and millions and millions, 30 million for one quarter, 50 million for a quarter, not a year, quarters. And so now that they're out of here, the Biden administration, he's dipping into homeless funds from state and federal that's supposed to be allocated to United States citizens who are homeless. That's a problem. And isn't that against the law?
So no, because remember, they have recategorized these illegals as homeless. They now get to be put in the same pot.
But the question is, no. The key word, that they're illegals. They're not homeless Americans.
But that's not what the legislature says. It says homeless residents of the state. And so once they give them what are called city key cards, which are city IDs, then you're considered a resident of the city. So you can utilize all finances and funds of the city. That's part of the welcoming city ordinance, so that your status in this country does not really dictate how you're able to access city resources. So the more of them who come here, those are more people pulling on the city resources. But remember, these people are not paying. They're not paying rent. They're not paying mortgages. They're not paying property taxes. So they're attracting more people here with invoices on their backs for people like me to pay for every month. And we can't afford that anymore. Like once we moved the conversation away from like the Venezuelans just breaking in the country and we made it a tax conversation, oh, everybody was with it. Everybody's like, absolutely, I felt sorry for them, but we can't afford them. Once it's a plain solution, or a plain conclusion rather. And Brandon's gonna go to jail. He's going to jail. Y'all will see he's going to get so indignant. He's going to think that everybody has his back. So we know that J.B. Pritzker's never going to put himself in a position to go to jail. We know that Toni Prewinkle is not going to put herself in a position to go to jail. But Brandon is the activist, remember? He's the socialist. They lock arms and scream at people. So he's going to try to do that from his position as mayor and end up in the Metropolitan Correction Facility, which is a federal jail in downtown Chicago. They already told him, you get in the way, we locking you up, and we're going to continue the mission. But he keeps on, picking. So let's see how it concludes.
Dana with the data. Dana with the data.